In this lecture, which will be a talk, as you probably already imagined, is in a bigger context of Tot in de Stad. And Tot in de Stad is a series of talks on different locations in Ghent. And this is one of them, but not the only one. So there are more. There were a previous one. Probably some people already know about them. And there will be more. And the idea is to focus on artists that leave the museum and go in the stad, in the city. So this is an artist that leaves the museum as well, or at least wants objects to leave the museum in a way, and by herself her practice is also not really, it is focused on the museum, but mainly also about leaving the museum in a way. And she's doing a residency at Manoeuvre, which is a textile shop or textile place in Ghent. Yeah?
It's an artist-run space.
An artist-run space. There will be textiles, but the thing is, for people who are really looking forward to learn more about that, I have to disappoint them, because we won't really talk about it, because it's already, Grace already talked a lot about it. So we talk about her other practices, and give maybe some, let's say, in-depth information about what she's doing. Maybe it also gives a better understanding of what she's doing at Manoeuvre. I think that's maybe it for an introduction, because we will introduce Grace herself. As you see, it's a bit of a multimedia kind of performance it will be. I will operate as a technician and an interviewer, so hopefully it won't be too much slapstick. But let's see what it will be. Yeah. We start with a small fragment of around 10 minutes to make you even more curious about Grace. So maybe we should just start with that.
Yes.
Some people think I am.
Yes. I agree. I can believe this. Okay. Jason Bourne.
Yeah.
The Bourne trilogy.
Well, I would smash him too.
Okay. Have you got your light thing?
Yeah, I like things.
Your lightsaber?
Yeah. Yeah, Jedi shit. Yeah, I would smash him too.
Oh wow, wait. Look at this. Where's the path?
Well,
Where's the...
enlightenment, right?
Yeah. Let me go and film this. Oh, okay, switch it off. Look how beautiful it is. Oh, look at that. Shit. All the way. That's weird. Oh. That's amazing. I've been making films about Egypt.
About?
Egypt.
Wow.
Using all the iconography. You know Afrofuturism?
No.
Okay, about Africa. Like the idea that the Egyptians
Yeah.
are space people. They're connected to different star systems.
Wow, that's deep shit. Real shit too.
Oh, that's lucky. Tell me more.
Yeah.
But basically, wow, look at the stars. Oh my god, it's beautiful.
Now I'm a star. Starman.
Starman. There's a film called Starman. Okay, we might need your thingy. Just for production reasons. Yeah, but the people, the Egyptians, when they built their pyramids, remember, they made them in lines, didn't they? To connect to the star systems.
I know, yeah.
Exactly.
Lion's Belt and the Milky Way and all that.
Exactly. and Soth as well,
Yeah.
that he actually went somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, they're connected to all those. And the Hall of Amenti is also connected to the, you know, the head of the Solar Council. Solar Council?
Yeah, tell me more.
Okay, they live in the sun.
Yeah.
They're like each planet has beings. You can't see them,
Yeah.
but they live in the sun.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because the day that he died, Akon Rinpoche, I went in the temple and for some reason I really felt more connected to the Solar Council, because last year, you know, on 21/12, remember on the day that we were meant to, the end of the world was meant to happen.
Well,
Okay.
end of the world.
Remember the 21st, the shift.
Yeah, the shit, right, yeah.
The shift.
That's
Not the shit, the shift.
Yeah, the shit, yeah.
The shift. Yeah, exactly. So that day, I was in Stonehenge.
Wow.
You know what Stonehenge? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so that was really cool, but kind of funny as well. But anyway.
Shit, I'm gonna kidnap you.
Well, it could be quite easy here, isn't it?
Yeah.
No one's gonna know. But yeah, so we did a meditation in Stonehenge and make a big connection to the Solar Council. And they're the ones that told me about the Hall of Amenti.
Where's that? Is that close?
No, it's far. It's
not
8
that,
hours. It's
right?
near.
That's far.
No, that's close.
That too.
That's quite close. It's near. I guess it's near London. It's probably an hour and a half from London.
That's really
Did you fly
Yeah.
to Glasgow?
Well, no.
No. Yeah.
No.
Great.
This
No.
time
Yeah.
we took the flight to London and then we took the train from there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because I visited the Shaolin Temple
What do you mean this time? How many times have you been here?
too.
Really?
Yeah, in the flight.
How did you find out about it?
Well, Google.
You just Googled?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
No, I missed the bed, so I wanted to go to bed, but I couldn't. And then
Okay, you stand on that side. Yeah.
then I Googled Tibetan monastery,
Okay.
something. Wikipedia, Tamil Ring.
Okay. Wow. So you just took the jump, and did you bring your friend, Kino?
Yeah, this time, yeah.
But last time, no.
No.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I had to be by myself.
It's important sometimes.
Yeah, this
You
was
have to
really
be.
important. There was a lot of shit
Okay. Yeah, it's quite a big change if you leave university. If you drop out.
Yeah, but
and
that was
decide-
a few years ago.
When did you drop out? When you were 18? 19?
Something like that, yeah. I think so. 19.
Yeah.
I mean, not 1920, you know.
Well, you do
That was a
look.
long
Sometimes you look quite old.
Yeah, I am.
Oh my god. Can you read the stars?
Well,
You know which is which?
some of them, like Orion's belt, you know, Orion.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Although,
But I mean, I guess,
look here with look at these ones.
yeah,
There's the saucepan
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, but I like to watch them.
Lucky. We're so lucky. Last week when I walked home, it was just dark. There were
Yeah.
it was just, you couldn't see anything.
Yeah. I think it was the day before. You could see everything.
You could see everything.
Yeah, all of them.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy.
What time do you normally go to bed then?
Well, me?
Yeah.
12, I think.
12?
12 or 1, yeah.
What time do you get up?
7?
7.
Yeah.
Okay.
How about you?
Well, in our cottage, everyone goes to sleep at 9 o'clock.
Really? Wow.
9, 10. But normally I probably...
Nice.
Yeah, everyone... Well, here, I don't mind doing that here. Although last night it was fun to stay up till like... We stayed up till 12. And it was exciting. It was like, wow, we're wild. You know what I mean? It was like a wild night out. But have you been to northern Sweden? Like where the Sami people live?
I have, yeah.
Oh, I'd love to go there.
Yeah.
I love this kind of place.
I love this place, I have to see it.
I think I might come back though. Come back and...
Next year.
Are you going to build a house?
No, I'm gonna build a temple. Make it grow.
That's funny. So I'm
Tell
just...
me more about the Stonehenge, the Egypt.
The what? Afrofuturism?
Yeah, or Stonehenge or whatever.
Oh yeah, so Stonehenge.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really powerful.
Oh.
It was really it's scary. It was really powerful because we stayed there like for like a week. You know.
Camping or what?
Well, living in this van. Because basically, last year I left London, I quit my apartment, I threw everything away, apart from my art. And then I started to go to live in different communities, like Buddhist communities. I was doing all these silent retreats. Believe it or not, yes, be something. No one ever believes me, but yes. I have been silent.
For how long?
10 days.
Wow.
So I've done like that 4 times
Wow.
in my life, which I think is quite good.
Yeah.
And then I was doing that, and then I met some people there, and then we went to Stonehenge together, and we lived in this van.
How was it?
In the van. Oh, it was incredible. It was kind of intense. Yeah. It's quite a complicated topic.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But basically there was like a karmic past life thing going on.
Wow.
Yeah. Because last year I quite got into past lives. Before that, I always believed in reincarnation, but I didn't really see my own evidence for past lives.
How about now?
Oh, now? Oh, yeah. Now I've seen so much shit.
Yeah, me too.
You know.
A lot of shit.
You mean the Egypt shit?
Well, in a way, yes.
Mhm.
Egypt, Tibet, you know, a lot of shit. China, Japan.
All right, so I think this can work as an introduction. You talk a bit about Afrofuturism. You talk about throwing everything away, about past lives, and then we see something different than we hear. So maybe you can say something about what we see and what we hear.
Okay, I chose this video. It's called Raiders of the Lost Ark. Obviously, that's Spielberg's film. I just stole the title. But it's actually, the image is set in Ethiopia when I was there doing a show. And me and a curator, we happened to go out for the day to the countryside, and we discovered this church, this rock-hewn church, like so carved into the rocks. And so I filmed it, and then the soundtrack is, I was living in a Tibetan monastery, and me and this guy were walking home at night time. So we lived about, it'd take us 40 minutes about, if it was like icy or whatever, let's say 30 minutes to walk from the monastery to our cottage. And so we're walking home at night and we're talking about all the star systems, and we have like this conversation that's all about UFOs and aliens and past lives. And things. And so in the video, I decided to put the image and the sound together, and then the subtitles, they go in and out of sequence. So the idea is it's like about a layering of all these different geographies and histories. So it's kind of like showing my interest in non-linear time and these interests in different realities. Because I believe that there are these different realities happening at the same time. So it's a good video of mine to show, like, let's say, an overall idea of some of the subtext to my practice.
And then maybe you can also say something about like Stonehenge, what was happening there, and because Stonehenge was also the link you came here, and
Came again?
no, that you came there, like the Buddhist monastery,
Okay. Yeah.
and you live in a van, you said.
Okay. Yeah, so at that time, this is around 2012, I'd been living in London and I was fed up of it. I just believed there must be a better way to live. So I decided to give everything up and go and live in all these places. And I lived in all these different types of communities, like ashrams and New Age communities. And I lived with the Hare Krishnas, which wasn't a good idea at all. And I lived in a van as well. And we lived in a bit in the forest, and we also stayed next to Stonehenge. And this was during the time when, do you remember 2112? In 2012, the world was meant to end, according to the Mayan calendar. So we were like there with like loads of people around Stonehenge. It was really funny. Loads of pagan type people and druids, and they were like doing loads of rituals, and like the police were kind of there, but they kind of let us just take over during that period because there was just too many people that turned up expecting, and in fact I don't know what people were expecting, but it was like a social occasion as well. Yeah, so that's why I'm referring to Stonehenge. Yeah.
From Stonehenge, you went to this monastery.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the
I guess.
The next community, or.
Yeah, in the timeline. Sorry, because I moved around a lot in that period, in different communities. So yeah, I must have before. Yeah.
Maybe it's an idea to look at your background a bit.
Yeah.
And show some pictures of.
Yeah. So I can tell you a bit about my background. So my background's originally in textile art. So I studied textile art in Winchester, and before that I'd done like A-levels in like geology, textiles, fashion and textiles, and English. And then, so then I did textile art. But then when I was doing textile art, I was starting to make videos. I started making like Super 8 videos. And then I moved to Ateliers, the postgrad school in Amsterdam. And there, that was great, because there I could do whatever I wanted. So then I started making like videos and little installations. And then afterwards, I was like unsure what I really wanted to do. So at the same time, I started having like a double life. So I had like this secret esoteric life, and I had like loads of gurus and yoga teachers, and like went really deep down this path of like meditation and things. But I kept them quite separate from my art life. Because at the time, people really just didn't understand. They thought it was just weird or whatever.
It was really on a personal level that you were.
Yeah, it was a personal level.
Things.
Well, yeah, I've always been interested in the bigger questions since I was a kid, always doing some form of, let's say, spiritual activity. But like, let's say more formally, I then had teachers. And then, so actually that's what helped me to get into performance. Because at the time I was very into artists like from the 60s, 70s, like Bruce Nauman, Marina Abramovic, Anna Mendetta, that land art movement. And so I was very interested in different states of being. And so that's how I started doing performances in front of the camera. So I'd set the camera up, and then I'd film myself in a state of trance. And so then I could use textiles or music, but because I was in this state of trance, I could go deeper, let's say. And then afterwards, I would look at what I had done, because I wouldn't know until after the video had been recorded. And this is what helped me, you know, go into art more.
Talking about different realities.
Yeah, there's a different reality happening right now.
Yeah. So then at that moment, you use more or less these. I think I can do it without a microphone, maybe. We'll try to do it without a microphone. Yeah. At this moment, you started to use these techniques. You used, let's say, in a more private atmosphere. You use them in your performative sphere to get to these different layers.
Yeah, because I was interested in this idea of transmitting different energies. That video was a medium. It's a visceral medium, meaning that it's physical. When you watch a film, you have physical reactions. You know, your hair on your skin stand up, or you know, you feel emotionally touched. And I was interested also that the media and the news were always using film to indoctrinate and have a culture of fear. You know, and I grew up in a house, my mother was an activist, so I was always taught from a young age, don't believe the news kind of thing. So I was quite interested in how you could use the medium of film or video in a positive way, maybe. So why not use transmit positive energies through the medium of film? So that's what I was playing with at the time. Yeah.
But already then it was textiles, videos.
Yeah, but I was also starting to do trips. So I went to Mali on a trip, and I would start to film behind the camera. So I would be behind the camera, and I would go let's say I would perform behind the camera, and it would affect what was in front. So, for example, I was in Mali recording music. I travelled with some Tuareg nomadic people. And then I did a film called Pole to Pole, where I went to Alaska, and I'd learnt to do Mongolian throat singing at the School of London Oriental Studies in London. So I'd learnt how to do Mongolian throat singing, and Mongolian throat singing, it works with harmonics and electromagnetic energy. So you sing like 5 notes instead of 1 note. And so I'd gone, the idea was to go closer to the poles and to send like a healing song round the earth, so through the electromagnetic energy. So I'd do like these kind of performances, but always in a filmic way, and using...
The goal of making a video as an end result.
It was always about video, and I specialised for 10 years really in video, because I thought I want to know one medium very well. So, and I started working with Lux. They do, they're an archive.
The artist video, distribution, production a bit in London.
Exactly. So I started working with them a bit, and but then after that, I decided I wanted to branch out, and that's when I started to, you know, do live performance, photography, painting, writing. And these were all coming from this idea of this healing the museum idea.
Yeah, but then what do we see here?
Okay, so this show is a show that I did in Glasgow. It's a survey show I did. And you can obviously see all the different types of mediums. I was asked by the Glasgow School of Art to go there after they had that fire. Remember they had a fire, the first fire in 2015. So the first fire burnt basically half the building down. And so they invited me to do a shamanic performance in there to bring the building back to life. And it was like quite a powerful experience, because we had ex-teachers there and ex-students who knew the building. And it was like quite sad. You know, the building, all the library was burnt, or the books, you know, there was like, you know, I had a tour with the building manager, and because it was like a 200-year-old building, so it had like its own, you know, energies and things, and its own histories, and it was a very powerful experience to do that.
Yeah, and was this the moment you started working from video to more performative?
Yeah, but it was really because of this idea of doing these shamanic performances. So basically here, they also let me do like a survey show in the new building. So luckily what had happened, the one building burnt down, and then the week before the building had burnt down, they'd opened a brand new building across the road. Imagine.
Yeah.
It's like crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So at least the students had somewhere to go. Yeah.
So maybe say something about the shamanistic performances.
Okay, yeah, so basically, the shaman kind of believes in different realities. So there are 3 levels, 3 worlds. There's the lower world, the middle, and the upper world. And so the lower world, you could say, simply is, let's say, more to do with animals and nature. And then the middle world, it kind of looks like this world, but it's slightly wrong. So, for example, did you ever see that film Inception?
Yeah.
So you know how like there's that scene where they're walking in the hotel and then it flips upside down, everyone's upside down. It's kind of like that. It's like if you went in the Albert Heijn and then it was suddenly upside down. Or if there was like a talking dog, you know what I mean? And you'd understand it. It's kind of like that. And then the upper world is kind of like you can see different star systems, galaxies, you know, everything from above. And the idea is that these realities are happening, so we could be sitting here right now having a conversation, but then there's an us 50,000 years ago, you know.
Having a conversation.
Maybe having a go, I don't know what you're doing 50,000 years ago. But this idea that time is fluid. And that's how the show was. So you could navigate all the different spaces. And the curators were really nice because they let me kind of basically just play with the space. Yeah. And so you would like go from each place to each place. And in the video we watched just now was in the show as well.
Yeah. Because I think we maybe made a step about first you doing these, if I might say, new age kind of, that you're having these kind of new age interests and shamanistic things, or maybe not necessarily the shamanistic, but let's say just these new age stuff, and being an artist, and then at some point you decide to combine these two.
Yeah. And I should say that really just to give an overview, that my practice has always been really about Africa, indigenous cultures, shamanism, and the Western fascination with New Age. Yeah. So that's rave. And also the idea that there's 2 different types of trance, you know, like there's spiritual trance and then there's rave trance, and how these things overlap, you know, as well.
Maybe also at the moment that the rave is coming up, people aren't that religious anymore, and then there's this.
Well, they're having some sort of spiritual experience, but like this is interesting to talk about in terms of what that actually means. Yeah.
So maybe you could say something why you decided that there is a link between this shamanism and being an artist.
Yeah, so my idea was in 2012 I started this idea called Healing the Museum, because I basically started to think that museums were places that were actually dying. They weren't alive places because they always felt very cut off from what was going on outside, either politically or, let's say, energetically. And so I started to think that it could be good to bring things like shamanism or meditation into the museum to enliven them, basically. And so that's when I started doing these performances. So the next folder we're going to show you is of one of the performance projects I did. I actually did it in Brussels last year. And it was the most, complicated one. So basically it was called A Meal from My Ancestors, Healing the Museum. And I worked with 2 sets of people who never really meet. So one set was with refugees and migrants and activists, and the other set were decision makers, so people who work at the UN, NATO and the Parliament. So I basically worked with 2 sets for 4 months. I gave meditation classes to the refugees, and I did creative visualization, let's say, with the decision makers. Because what I found is that decision makers, because they have to use their left brain all the time, you know, making rational decisions, they lack some sort of creative thinking process. And refugees and activists, they live with a lot of stress, so it's really about calming the mind. So I've basically worked with these groups, and then at the end, we did this performance weekend. So on the Saturday, we did a performance which was about, the theme of the whole project was about healing trauma. So using food, shamanism, performance, to talk about healing trauma. Yeah.
So then maybe you could say something about a practical thing. So food is important.
Yeah. So in the project, so on the Saturday we did the performance. You can see it when we're all lying on the floor. So what I'm doing is I'm drumming, and then I give people certain intentions. So I say, for example, I did another performance in Texas where, and it was with medical doctors and with new age people, like yoga people and art people. And we would ask plants what the function of art was in the 21st century. And obviously, the answer that a plant will give you is completely different than what a person will give you, you know. And that's one of the things in my practice. I'm very interested in the dialogue between left and right brain activity. For example, in the West, we're very left orientated, you know, being rational, clear thinking, you know, judgmental, categorizing. And it's the right brain is underused. So things like dreaming, shamanism, meditation, creativity, this is right brain activity. So on the first day, the idea was to basically go and find their spirit guides and ask them questions about how we could deal with this refugee crisis. And it was very powerful. And then afterwards we drew what we had seen during our journeys. And for some people it was quite a life-changing experience. For one of the women who works in the parliament, she became really, what she saw was really strong, so much so that it was about kind of climate change. And so her idea was to, when she went back to the parliament, was to basically start a think tank about climate change, because in the parliament and in the UN referendum for refugees, there's kind of no if you're a climate change refugee, you don't have any protection. You know, if you're a refugee from genocide, you know, it's fine, but climate change is, you know, it's a very grey area. So she started this think tank and she wrote this paper about it, you know, and that came out of this shamanic journey. You know, so that was really powerful to have something real, concrete, come out of something artistic. And then I should talk about the second day of the conference. This is when I invited a doctor to talk about food and how food can be healing. And I also invited a shaman, and she brought images of her brain. Yeah, a shaman, and she's been having a brain scanned. So she's been having a brain scanned by doctors at the Sorbonne, and to show what trance does. And I think that's important, to see medical evidence of these things. You know, people have been studying meditation, the effects of meditation on the body, to see exactly see how the healing works. And so that was really interesting to have her there as well. And she's done a lot of things. We're really lucky because the week before she'd been in Google in America. They'd asked her to come and show her evidence, what she's working on. And she's given a TED talk. So it was really interesting to have her perspective. And then we invited some people from the parliament as well to talk about how healing can be implemented into the parliament on a well, let's say on a European scale, in terms of healing trauma to do with the refugee crisis. Whether shamanism could be useful on things.
Yeah, because you were saying you will ask plants.
Yeah, no, plants was when we were in Texas.
Okay.
But this time, this was just us asking our spirit guides for answers.
Yeah, so then you see yourself, or maybe every artist, as a shaman, as someone who had to cure society in a way?
Oh, no, because I do think you could obviously you can just make art that is aesthetic. You can make art for all sorts of reasons, but making art in this way is also valid, if you know what I mean. So the shaman was also the artist and the healer. So it depends, you know.
So in this case, you are the healer.
Yeah.
And then maybe we should talk about the function of the museum.
Okay.
What the museum is doing in that sense, because in a way it's like an unnatural.
So a natural environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but actually the reason why I like to work in museums in this way is because usually people that go to museums are quite rational and believe they're never going to see anything. And then they do the performance, and usually most people see something or feel something that they haven't seen or felt before, either something from their childhood or something new, let's say. Like in the Macintosh building in Glasgow, one girl said she saw Macintosh, you know. So people have these kind of, you know, this talent, but it's underused, let's put it this way. Sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, so the question was, what is the role of the museum? If
Yeah.
this, like, for this, you clearly don't need a museum.
Yeah, but the
In a
point.
way, I would
Yeah,
say.
but the point is that for me, museums are like one of the few spaces, like parks and like, let's say, churches that are in the city that are places of contemplation, and that's a really important thing. It's a place where you have time to think. You know, think about new ideas and interact with people and objects in another way that you don't normally interact. Normally our interaction is always about entertainment or disconnection from others. So for me, those places are important, you know.
So if you, like, you wrote this paper on healing the museum, and it's also the practice you're doing is healing the museum. So in this case, healing the museum means bringing the museum back to this function of contemplation,
Yeah, I mean,
meditation maybe, or...
well, to me also that the museum is related to the cave. You know, like, so the first cave paintings, you know, that were made, how the first, let's say the first artists, you know, when they were making whatever they're making, maybe they didn't think they were making art, maybe they just thought they were like making signs, I don't know. But they were also at the same time doing shamanic practices of stopping the mind and slowing down time. And so I think time is a key factor, you know. Why is it that when we have time to observe and look at things, why is it that then we are more creative and come up with different solutions? So my idea is that we need new ways to come up with solutions to world problems, don't we? You know, and using the left brain has led us to this nonsense at the moment, you know, with all the political problems. So we need the right brain to kind of give us new ideas. And so museums are part of the culture. Museums, you know, are important places, you know, and we need to take them back and use them.
The museums and the objects. Probably.
Yeah, and the objects. Yeah, so then I wrote another essay called Ways of Seeing, a new museum story for planet Earth. And that's kind of about objects, about this idea about how we collect objects, how always the objects are seen from a monetary value point of view. First, it's like monetary, then it's cultural, and then it's spiritual. And how actually objects, if we always see objects as dead, you know, then we miss out on something. Yeah. Well, because I mean, this is how we've ended up with a situation, for example, with Trump. You know, Trump is the first president to come up with the idea that we could sell national parks. Okay, because he thinks that it's a dead place. He doesn't understand that nature is alive, that things are alive.
An object.
Yeah, he sees it as an object, but in the worst way, as it objectified, as a
dead object.
yeah, as resource, and that's why you know, he thinks you can just exploit.
Yeah.
But I think also with museums, they, especially ethnographic museums, for example, most of the objects in those museums were not made to be in a museum.
Yeah.
For example, the totem poles in a museum, they're made to be outside. They need to be in the rain, they need the wind to fulfill their own function, you know. And you can feel that, like you can feel the sadness of objects in museums, like in the British Museum, in the Kay Branly, in the Taverden, you know. And so I'm quite interested in talking to curators and stuff about that, you know.
Because I can imagine it's really, especially for ethnographic objects, there's a lot of discussion, like we should give them back to the people and then all these kind of things. But you also see it to contemporary art.
Yeah, I'm interested in like how we activate the museum through what we make as artists. I think we do. I think everything we make now is in line with those first painters 50,000 years ago. You know, it's our human stories being told, isn't it? It's not finished. So whatever you make now, like today, is in conversation with that. And I think that's the key point. And in my own work, even though I talk about contemporary things, you know, I can talk about politics or, I don't know, contemporary issues, or use a contemporary medium like video or something, there's still slideshows. There's still always something ancient and something, you know, something bigger in us, so that we understand where we fit in this story of being human, you know. And that, to me, that's the important thing, you know.
Of understanding what it is to be human.
Yeah, what does it mean to be human?
Yeah. Because I found this quote in your article. I think maybe this also describes a bit these ideas. It's this quote by Chisnatan, if I say it right, like.
Oh yeah, Thich Nhat Hanh.
Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah.
And there.
he's a monk. He's a Buddhist monk.
Yeah, and he, like, you quote him by saying, "If you are a poet, you will see clearly that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. The cloud is essential for the paper to exist. If the cloud is not there, the sheet of paper cannot be here either." So it's really about this interbeing of materials.
Yeah, because it's about the quality of attention in your mind, that you understand there is these other spaces in between, you know, and the media and the influx. I mean, Ghent's a bit different because Ghent's, you know, quite a slow city anyway. It's a beautiful city, the building. There isn't that much advertising or, you know, commercials like a lot of cities, where there's more mental distraction. So I guess Ghent is a place where you could become slower.
Yeah. So you need it becoming slower, trying to understand life better, and also maybe liberating objects and ideas to become new objects, new ideas, like this cloud that in the end is important to this sheet of paper, that in this sheet of paper is this cloud, and maybe by locking it up in the museum, you prevent it from any other relation, or at least people are.
You can do.
People have these ideas that it's the end of the story, more or less.
Yeah, you can do, because some objects, they need to be looked at to feel activated, to be themselves. Not all objects, but some objects do.
Yeah.
We can go to the other.
To the other one, yeah. And then maybe also, because you're also doing things in museums, like literally liberating objects in the museum, or going there as a special place.
So this is a project called the Arc. It's a project I did in Paris, in the Laboratoire Aubervilliers. It's an art centre on the outskirts of Paris. And it's plays in a neighbourhood, let's say, that's much more migrant and poor. So there's a lot of Moroccans, Somalians who live there. But it's funny because the commune, the area has a communist mayor. So he's very open-minded, so he has this centre there, and it's all about experimentation. So I was lucky. So after all these years of living in all these communities, I was like, okay, I'd become a bit disillusioned because every time I'd live in a community, I would see that the same problems that were in the city were in the community, you know, like racism, sexism, you know, whatever, classism, ageism. This was happening as well. So the idea of running away and living in the nature also doesn't work. You still have to interact with the city. So after all these years, I was thinking, what shall I do with my research? And of course, I could make a show, but then I just also decided, why not just start my own community? So that's what I did. So in this, I started a community, and I invited artists, scientists, and spiritual people to live together in the art space. And we basically built, there was a black room, a black box, and we built like a dormitory. And we built a little classroom. We built, there's a garden, community garden anyway, so we grew some food there. We had an art room where we'd make costumes, and I came up with quite a strict timetable, like on a retreat. So basically, it was off-grid. No one could have their phones or have cameras or anything. And so then every day, we basically worked on different topics. So the whole thing was structured in the chakra system. Do you know what the chakra system? Like did they? Maybe. Maybe explain.
Maybe you can explain it.
Well, maybe you should translate it. I don't know. Maybe it's not the same word. Chakra is like from yoga. It's an Indian yogic word. About 7 different levels in the body. And basically they are different energy centers in the body, and they have different consciousness. So, for example, you have the root chakra. This is about foundations. You have the second chakra. This is about relationships, intimacy. The third chakra is about power. The fourth is about connection in the heart. The fifth is about communication. The sixth is about vision. And the seventh is about unity. So I basically structured everything around this chakra system. So the first day we did a talk about the history of communities. We ate food that stimulated that chakra, and we did spiritual exercises for it. And then the second day we did the same again, you know, but with different food, different exercises. And it was really interesting because I had found a chef who could be part of the project. And she had done a lot of retreats, but she could cook anything. She cooked Indian food, Mexican food, Japanese food, all sorts of food. And she was really flexible for this idea and understanding about stimulating different energies and different conversations. So, because, for example, on the fourth day, which was about heart connection, we had a biologist from Ecuador, and he had lived in the Amazon, and he talked about all the issues that were going on in the Amazon with indigenous people. So we were using everybody's talents throughout the week. In the morning, we would wake up around 8 o'clock, and we had like the big gong, you know, like gong, and we had borrowed it from the Philharmonic. Paris Philharmonic lent us this massive like gong thing. And then after that, we'd have like a silent breakfast. And then we would do something spiritual. And then we'd have an academic talk on a problem or whatever. And then in the afternoon, we'd work on making these costumes. So you've seen some of the images with costumes and everything. And we did a protest. So on about the 6th, 7th day, we opened up to the public. And we went out into the street, and we did this protest, which was about bringing extinct animals back to life. And so basically we were walking down the street, and it was like the summer was so hot. It was like 35 degrees or something. and we stopped the traffic and everything. It was really fun. And we went to the metro station, and we had like all the public following us. We had all these kids following us in the park, and some of them were crying because they thought we were real animals, and it was really funny. And then in the evening we had a barbecue, and all the neighbourhood could come, and people came, and it was really nice. And then the next day we had like a round table, academic round table, and this is where we would talk about things. So we would talk about subjects like ecology and also spirituality and capitalism, or about ecology and art, different subject matters. And it was really powerful. And all this information, if you want to have a look, all the recipes, all the poems from there, because we had poetry workshop during the ARC, and we had non-violent communication workshops. All this information is on the ARC website. I've archived everything. And the idea is that it's the ARC is like a test model. So people can go on there and they can make their own ARC. So I've given everything away so everybody can use it as a model.
It's like opening up a community or something like you
Yeah.
different communities, and then to this community more to the city.
Yeah, because it's important that dialogue between urban and rural. And actually, that's quite a big topic of conversation at the moment, especially in England. And in fact, the Whitechapel have just published a book about it called The Rural. The ARC is in it, but many other artists and writers, if you're interested in this topic, it's just come out, that book.
Yeah. So this was really leaving the museum.
Yeah.
But sometimes you also go back to the museum.
I mean, this is still an art centre, so it is still technically
Still an
related,
institution,
to the museum. Yeah, because I one of my things in my work is that I'm very interested in institutional critique and, let's say, structural change, and how it works for me is to work, let's say, in these types of research projects. And that's kind of like what I'm doing here in Ghent. I'm doing a residency at Manoeuvre, but also that project called Cover Slut, which you may have heard about. This is a project that's about fashion and economics. And so it's a new research project where we look at how we could have a different type of fashion label. So in our fashion, I came with this idea of like talking about race, class and democracy. And so we try to make clothes that have that in mind. So the people that we work with migrants, we work with students. The idea is that I got fed up that fashion is kind of elitist, and there's always like a strict hierarchy of, there's always autumn, winter, spring, summer. And why do you have to have that calendar? Why not just do things when you want? So we did an event in December on the new moon, so completely out of the fashion calendar. But this is the idea of like how to talk about the economics. And so I brought this idea of pay what you can to Ghent. And that's, it's been an important process.
Yeah, and you also did something at Tate. So you also goes to classical museums to literally use them. Recently I did, like just a few weeks ago actually, I did like a family workshop. I'd never worked with children or families before, and that was really interesting. So I did a day of contemplation with actually there was a 4-year-old, but most of them like 7 to 10, the kids and their parents. And in that day, it was really interesting. So we were doing walking meditation, and we were doing drawing. And we began in the, Tate Britain, so that's the old Tate, so it has all the classical paintings in it. So first of all, we started in the workshop room, and that was really interesting because their idea of Tate is that they want their family workshop program to become a community. So they asked me to go there to talk about communities. So I gave activities that I thought that would bond them. So first of all, we discussed what a community is to them. And it was really interesting because the kids gave so many interesting
answers that I didn't think they would give, you know, about the kids were like, yeah, it's like a settlement and it needs to be peaceful. And they were like really political, the kids.
And this was when you were meditating together or also afterwards? Or
This is before we even
Before,
started. So at the
yeah.
beginning of the workshop, just talking about what community meant to them. And the kids would say, and then their parents would say as well. And some of the parents were really shocked by what their kids said. Like, because one of the kids said, I want to learn to meditate because I want to become psychic. Like this little, and her parents was like, oh my God, you know, totally shocked. It was really funny. But he was really good at meditating, that kid. So he could actually, you know. Yeah, so yes, and then we first of all did it downstairs. And then afterwards we went upstairs into the gallery. And when we were downstairs, of course we were safe. There was no audience, no one was looking at us. We could, you know,
together in a
yeah, like
room.
10, 12 people together, you know, in this group. And then, but when, and before we went up, I'd said to them, look, you're going to have to stay strong, you know, because people are going to be looking at us, people are going to be taking pictures of us, you know. But then we went upstairs and we sat in one of the galleries, and in fact we moved a piece of furniture out of the way, and you're not allowed to touch the furniture. And the curator was like, I don't know if we can move it. I was like, come on, we're just going to move it like 10 centimetres. Who's going to know? So we did move it. And then we all sat down on the floor, and everyone took their shoes off. And that was interesting to be in the museum with no shoes on as well. How it feels different, you know.
Literally use it as a place.
Yeah, like it's our place, you know. So we just sat there and like just meditated, and yeah, that was really interesting. And everyone was, the kids were really concentrated for like 10 minutes, you know. And then afterwards we got up, we did some drawing there as well, and then we walked to another room to do some walking meditation. And this is where it was interesting, whether parents became a bit more nervous, they got embarrassed. You know, they got embarrassed at the public. So one dad, he put his shoes on because he felt like, oh God, I'm a man. Yeah. You know, I need to show I'm a man. I need to put my shoes back on. I don't know, it was like a thing that he needed to do. So he had to put his shoes back on. You know, that was interesting to see, you know, who got embarrassed, why they got embarrassed. You know, see, because spirituality is a dirty word, you know. Yeah.
Maybe it's a good moment to...
Yeah, some questions, yeah.
So, I'm sure there are a lot of questions. Who will be first to start? Yeah?
When did you, so you told us that you first moved to all these different communities. So that was, I think, for yourself, like to find something in yourself, but when did you transition to helping other people or making other people experience these spiritual things rather than just for you, or do you get anything from the experiences in group? Do you know what
Yeah, I kind of know what you mean. I guess...
The moment when it was from individual spiritual experience to a shared spiritual experience.
And whether you get something from it now, or when you did it in group.
Yeah. Well, I guess... Well, because before I formed... So the period that I'm talking about is in 2012, when I really quit everything and thought there's got to be a better way to live than living in London in an apartment and blah, blah, blah. And before that, I had gone and done things. So I'd been to Burning Man, you know Burning Man? And I'd done some woofing, like organic farming in New Zealand. So I've always been doing these things. But that was the time when I read, no, I've had enough. I'm going to go and find out. And I guess I was kind of doing my own type of residency, you know, at the same time. So it was, let's say, for spiritual personal development, but it was also, I was thinking, you know, in terms of, I'm always thinking about, you know, I don't know, you said helping people, let's say socially benefiting activities. That's how you could say it. Because I grew up with an activist, so it's indoctrinated into my head that everything that you do has to be connected to that question. So there is no separation in that sense, you know, like even, for example, you could say in the 60s it was quite separate, you know, there were people who would just do spiritual activities, and then there were people who were doing protest and activism. And now, you know, so you're doing internal things and external things to change the world. And now you kind of basically need to do both, you could say, the inside and the outside, the inner and the outer. So that's important. And it's still important to me. I still go to different communities. Even though now I'm here, you know, I've got a base, I still go to different communities to do things and to see, you know.
And then, like, I think that the second part of the question was how you feel, like, what is the difference for you?
Yeah.
Personal, like, or meditating and going to, let's say, all these different New Age kind of groups, or doing this, like, as a shared thing?
You mean the difference between doing the arc or going to live in the communities?
Yeah, like, before, like, that you separate your art from your spiritual...
Now it feels better. Let's say because I've found a way to give voice to something that was always there. You know, I was always doing these things. That's what I mean. It was always like a double life. And now it's more joined together. So it feels more harmonious than denying one part of yourself, which is unhealthy, isn't it?
Yes?
You say spirituality is a dirty word these days. Have you ever come in conflict with like the larger monotheistic religions when you do like group sessions or stuff?
I would say that people, well, maybe not in Belgium. I can't talk about Belgium. Let's say I could talk about the difference between, in broader terms, Western and non-Western culture, let's say. Because remember, 75% of the world believe in animism. They believe that the world is alive. It's only in the West that people think that it's dead, you know, and science is always used to rationalize things, you know, and I do think it's possible to believe in science and to, you know, have scientific data and be spiritual. I mean, it's not like a choice. You can have both, can't you? You know, why not? You have logical reasoning for a purpose, but you can also believe in other things. So in England, I would say it's quite a nihilistic culture, or quite material. It's not materialistic, it's materialist. So this idea of atheism is quite heavy, but then also being an atheist is a type of religion, you know, because atheists talk, if you think about it, atheists talk about God more than anyone, because they've always talked about the denial of God. It is, if you think about it, it's quite funny. Yeah, but I'm kind of joking about spirituality being a dirty word, but in the art world, let's say, yeah. Because in art, it's always referred to either as mysticism or it needs to be connected to something like anthropology to be accepted. Yeah.
And how do you see this development? Like, do you have hopes for the future of the museum?
Oh, things have really improved, I tell you. Yeah, when I was a student and I started meditating when I was in Amsterdam doing ateliers and stuff, I have to say, like, some of my peers and even some of my tutors, even though I love my tutors, you know, I had some amazing teachers, they would be like, what are you doing, meditate, you know, like, they'd be like, that's so weird and whatever. But now the world has changed. Meditation's kind of normal, this idea of mindfulness. Most people know what it is. So it's not just something strange. It you know, it's accepted form of, you know, in England, maybe in Belgium, it's in the health insurance. So you can get meditation on it. You know, I don't know. But in England, there is a way to be. Acupuncture is part of it. You know, there's more. The conversation about different forms of healing is open. You know, and I think that's where the museum is lacking, and that's why I think healing is a part of institutional critique. You know, it's not just about critical theory. And I mean, I do write essays about Trump and race and class. You know, but I also think it's important to write about museums and museology and stuff, and relate it to these different, bigger issues.
There is hope for the museum.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, what are we going to do? We're just going to abandon them? Abandon these buildings? Or we should, use them properly? They're not shopping centres, they're not entertainment centres, are they? They should be places where we contemplate and places where we can think of new ways of seeing.
Think about humanity.
Well, humanity, whatever. You can think about whatever, but just think about, inventing new ideas, new concepts. It's really important to use those functions.
Do you still produce art pieces or you need projects?
Pardon?
Do you still produce concrete art pieces or you just do projects and social gatherings?
No. I love making objects. I love doing painting. And my painting is really connected to my textiles. And it's funny, I started as a video person, let's say, and I've ended up making paintings last out of all my mediums. And that's because it took me ages to understand what kind of painter I was. Because my type of painting I could never quite understand, but now I've realised it. I call it post-hippie. Pop abstraction. So it has all these different elements to it. It has something glossy about it, but it has something handmade, the indigenous. And I wrote this thing about the idea that there's 3 different types of sweatshops in the world. What a sweatshop? Sweatshop? Okay. I don't know. But, so the idea that there's the artist studio is a type of sweatshop for the art market. The third world is obviously a type of sweatshop for the first world luxury brands. And also New Age, so indigenous cultures are also kind of a sweatshop for New Age culture. So I'm very interested in these different types of sweatshops, and
There's also different realities at the same time, or reaction.
different politics, let's say, and I put that in my painting. And actually, I'm doing a show. I should do some advertisement. I'm doing a show at Tatiana Peters Gallery at the end of this month, and I will be showing some objects, some photos. So, and they're photographs, and they're quite abstract, let's say, and they look like paintings, but they're actually photos. So yeah, come and have a look, and you'll see what I mean about the way that I install objects. How it's related.
Thank you for it's very interesting. I worked since many years in museum as a producer, as a technical also, and I can see almost every day the birth of the moment when we decide that this, especially contemporary art, this is now an art piece. And sometimes it's a piece of paper that before was in an atelier, and it's just a piece of paper that arrived on a display. We build, we create this energy of showing, and then we decide, okay, this is a piece of art. I'm not talking about ancient art.
Yeah.
Okay, so contemporary art, and this object became. I can really see and feel as the others. We decide, okay, now wow, this white clothes, there's money on it, or so. So this, I want to testify that this is true. There is an energy in objects, but not only because I think in animism, but also because we, as group of people or convention, we decide and we interact. And this is important also. We don't have to forget that it's not only the object, but how do we rely on object, and this is you talk a little bit, not too much maybe about the quantum physics or the things is not in yours. So the things is not like they are like this, but how do we perceive they became, no? Yeah. So maybe the Tutankhamun or the ancient things, they are dead, but we see that they're dead things, but there is also an energy or icon that we have it inside, and this is also important, I think. And then, so I'm I'm doubting about that just the animism and the things that they are dying. No, there is the thing that we write on it, we put money on it, so
Exactly.
This
We give value to it. We give a consensus.
yes,
We agree that that's art with a capital A, let's say.
but
Yeah.
this is real, I mean, without introduction, this is real, and this is a material. This interaction is a material.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, because if you're interested in institution, as well how the institution is built, why all the cleaning people are always coming from
Yes.
the kind of situation, and all the gardens, the same.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There is an interaction that
Exactly.
happens there, and it's for me maybe difficult to understand that when you go in a museum, you make a healing situation. It's one day, very interesting. People come, get and do, and maybe they get for sure. There is a resonance of what you do, okay? But then there is an attitude in everyday life in institution that it's, I feel, very hard to transform. It's
Yeah, of course.
it's a power situation. It's
Yeah.
and yeah.
Well, I mean, I can talk about two things in answer. One thing is, I think, in terms of institutions, one of the key things for me, for example, let's say with the UN project, when I had different decision makers, it was a really powerful moment when you've got all those different people lying on a floor. I mean, in a symbolic way and an energetic level way. People that never meet, people that have a strict hierarchy in terms of like, you're the decision this, you're the, like this in society. To have them all just lying on the floor as bodies is like a key, effect. And I was really proud of those people, because especially the people who were decision makers, they risked to do the project. They spent 4 months coming to do guided meditation and all sorts of things. And they would go back to their colleagues in the parliament and in NATO, and people would say, what did you do last weekend? And sometimes they would talk about it, sometimes they wouldn't, because they knew it could affect their career, So that's even a more extreme version than in a museum, in terms of hierarchy. So, yeah, but then as I gave the example of the woman from the parliament who then was so interested in studying shamanism herself and writing this think tank paper, it is possible to inspire real world change. And in museums, let's say in that context, in a small way, for example, the new Kunsthalle Ghent, because of the project with Coverslet being Pay What You Can, and then we did a pop-up store in Eastside Projects in England, and they had a summit for artist-run spaces, and Kunsthalle Ghent went there, and the conference was Pay What You Can in England, and so now Kunsthalle Ghent have decided to do Kunsthalle Ghent as Pay What You Can. So that's a small example, it started as this fashion experimental research project, and then now it's in the institution, and at Kunsthalle Ghent we're going to try to do maybe a conference about this Pay What You Can, like this idea, can it be not just for projects, can it really be within the whole institutional framework, So in those ways, that's, let's say, in the background of the institution. But in the other thing about objects, it's funny that you brought up the British Museum, because that's one of the spaces that I feel that there is a real disconnect between the way it's curated. I think most people have been to the British Museum, all the Egyptian objects all together, all packed in together. And remember, those objects were never meant to be seen. They were meant to be in the dark, They weren't meant to be seen by humans, apart from the people that put them in there, So having them on display, having them photographed, it is like the objects can feel that, and they can sense it. And that's why there's always like a feeling of like sadness, or let's say trauma in ethnographic museums. And for example, in the Tavern here in the you know what I mean. The African Museum. Obviously, your history with Congo is very complicated, and we're going to do a conference in May. There's going to be a closed conference. It's not for the public, it's for academics, artists, and activists to talk about the museum. And they've asked me to go there, and it's really because I keep writing to them about this healing, because, about this issue with the objects, and so that's one conversation. And I think it's important to still try to do these activities, even if it's, just it's like a virus, isn't it? You can obviously work outside of the machine, but you also need people inside as well, being like a virus inside. That's how institutions change. It's not going to change from the top down. It always changes, from within. So, yeah.
Do we have one more question? Then maybe, no, yes? Then maybe to end with, you also did something with some of...
Oh yeah, with the students. So, hello Sarah. So the graphic design department very nicely came to Manoeuvre, and we did a workshop with KASKlezing with designing, and they're actually going to design the new bag. This is the old bag from last year, but they're going to design the new bag, and we've made a short list of the students whose work we're going to produce, and we're going to have it at Propositions. So Propositions is an art fair that takes place during Art Brussels, and this year the theme is about capitalism, and I think that's why they decided to invite KASKlezing. And so, yeah, we're going to have the bags from the students. So these are the students.
so this is going to be the play what you can.
Yeah. So, please don't be offended by my pronouncement of your name. Enisa Elmage, Fien Leenaerts, Leon Jespers, Pepin Devos, Zar Tratsat. Oh, fuck. That's impossible. Zar Tratsat. Louise van der Putte. All right, you know who you are anyway. Yeah. So I just want to say, thanks to all the students for doing that. And we're going to have an event this Saturday at the KU. On Saturday, we're having a KASKlezing event, and you're welcome to come. We have a band from Paris come, and they're really good. We've got a DJ, we've got food, and we have a collection of kimonos we've been printing. And we have, the collection as well to buy. So, hope to see you there.